It's Christmas, and on Christmas, we open product. This year, a set of Duel Devastator. This is going to be a conversational, almost competitive review of the set. If you're interested in more animated reactions to pack openings, I would suggest Blue Eyes White Boy, who will be in the card. Opening this set is going to function a little bit as an upgrade to the draft deck, but more on that at the end of the video. Our first upgrade comes in the form of a new deck box. This is not included in the Duel Devastator set. The actual set is entirely foil, and since foil cards have a tendency to warp when exposed to air, they have already been sleeved in red and green, because Christmas colors. The set is non-randomized, so if you would like, you're welcome to follow along at home. Now, let's jump into the cards. The headline feature of the set is a full set of the Ghost Girls, notably Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood, Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries, Ghost Belle and Haunted Mansion, Red Blossoms from Underroot, and Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, which to me will always be Yuki Usagi, even if it's a bad translation. This is a set of mostly hand traps, and spans just about every attribute with the exception of dark. There are two dark monsters, being Winter Cherries and Red Blossoms from Underroot. And my theory is that Red Blossoms from Underroot is not part of the series since it's not a hand trap. That being said, the other 5 hand traps are still pretty useful. Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood is probably my least favorite, offering a disincentive for special summoning to give you life points each time your opponent special summons a monster, and has a drawback if they special summon 0 monsters. I think this is supposed to be a replacement for Max C, instead of card advantage having a big life point swing, but the card is just not worth it. Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring has quite the hype around it. It can negate the effect to add a card from deck to hand, to special summon from the deck, or send a card from deck to the graveyard. So this will hit draw effects, search effects, recruit effects, and cards like Foolish Burial. So very strong. Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries is meta-dependent, to say the least. It functions extremely well in a mirror match, but I'm getting ahead of myself. You discard this card, reveal 1 card from your extra deck, look at your opponent's extra deck, and then banish all copies of the revealed card. You have to either sacrifice an extra deck slot to target a linchpin extra decked monster, which is featured in the metagame, or alternatively, this functions well coming in from the sideboard with such a linchpin monster, or, as mentioned previously, is just good in mirror matches. Very meta-dependent. Good for tier 0 though. Ghost Belle and Haunted Mansion is pretty similar to Ash Blossom, this time functioning with the graveyard instead of the deck. Red Blossom from Underroot is okay. It special summons itself from hand, it revives a monster, it's not a ghost girl. And then finally, Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit is my favorite. It works from hand and on the field, and is a tuner. It does not target, but it does destroy a card on the field. Very strong in my opinion. On top of the actual Ghost Girls, there is a couple copies of Ghost Belle and Haunted Mansion Field Center, and 1 Ghost Sister of Spooky Dogwood Field Center. There's also a Nisara Field Center. I'm not sure if these are randomized, but they're purely cosmetic and don't have much function on the game, especially if your deck isn't particularly dependent on link monsters. But they're nice, I guess. Next up is quite a few extra deck monsters, which will be subdivided into category. The first being Synchro monsters. Metaphys Horus is a level 6, has 3 different effects, and I think that the most useful one is if a non-tuner pendulum monster is used, since you get control of one of your opponent's cards of their choice, but it's still a +2 in card advantage. Vermilion Dragon Mech is level 9, so it's a little bit difficult to summon right off the bat. Can banish a tuner from hand, graveyard, or face up the field, pop a card, and if it's destroyed by a card effect, you can target one of your banished tuners and add it to hand. So a little bit of recursion and works well with the first effect. There is an updated version of Bryanak, Dragon of the Ice Barrier, with the post-erratum text. This is going directly into the draft deck just so that I have a more tournament-friendly copy of the card. There's the classic Black Rose Dragon which is a board wipe, and it does something else with plant monsters no one cares about. Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier, a very strong, very difficult to make synchro monster, but it can banish a card from hand, field, and graveyard, which is quite the disruptive effect. Scarlight Red Dragon Archfiend is another card I believe I pulled in the draft, and it can destroy quite a lot of effect monsters, then do burn damage. Stardust Spark Dragon can protect either itself or something else on the field, and is an option for level 8 synchro plays. Ally of Justice Cataster is a level 5, any non-dark attribute monster it battles. Clearwing Fast Dragon is a synchro pendulum monster. You don't see many of those. It does require a non-tuner wind monster, so as far as making it, maybe I need to mainboard more Speedroid cards. The pendulum effect is also based on the Speedroid cards. This is not generic, so might not see play. Moving on to Xyz monsters, there is a rank 4 suite. The first being Abyss Dweller, which is good graveyard disruption, and in a water deck, gains 500 attack for a 2200 attack monster, which is decent on a rank 4. Then there's Castel, the Skyblaster Musketeer, which has 2 effects, one of which people forget about, that it has a Book of Moon effect, and otherwise it can spin a card. Number 101 Silent Honor Arc is non-destruction removal, and has a little bit of self-protection. Finally, there's Tornado Dragon, which might be a bit better than Diamond Direwolf when you're using it to pop a spell or trap card, but otherwise is not terribly exciting. On to Link monsters. Land 4 Hinchus is a Link 2 monster, extremely generic, bottom left, bottom right arrows, so pretty good. Topologic Bomber Dragon has a board wipe effect, but it is symmetrical. There's Decode Talker, so the flagship monster. It has a little bit of negation, but I don't think it's worth running, especially with that top arrow pointing at the opponent. But if you don't like Decode Talker, there's Decode Talker Extended, which functions as Decode Talker on the field. It has the Blackluster Soldier Envoy at the beginning double effect. Gaia Saber the Lightning Shadow is a new version of Gaia the Fierce Knight, is generic, Link 3, left, right, and bottom arrows. It's an okay option if you're desperate for any of those arrows. Underclock Taker has an underwhelming stat drain effect, but does have a bottom center arrow. Finally, Saryuja Skulldread is thankfully not banned at the moment. The main effects to look out for on this card are if 3 or more monsters are used, being able to special summon a monster from hand. There are no restrictions on this, it doesn't have to be level 4 or lower for instance. And the 4 effect, getting to draw 4 cards and then place 3 onto the bottom of the deck, which is a +1 in physical card advantage, but so much better when you consider virtual card advantage, since this functions as excellent card selection. I'm not sure if I can make this card, but it's going in my extra deck just on the off chance that the opportunity presents itself. Up next we have the main deck monsters, and there seems to be an emphasis on floodgates, as well as a few more hand traps. Vanity's Fiend is symmetric special summon suppression. A little bit difficult to get out, but could quickly end a game. Majesty's Fiend is pretty similar, this time working on monster effects. Denko Sekka is spell and trap suppression, always warning the Denko. Gate Blocker has 3 effects, none of which are particularly good, but for some reason I think that this card has potential and may one day be useful. Artifact Lancia is a 1-turn Imperial Iron Wall, and it has the artifact text too. So I guess if you really wanted to, you could set the card. DD Crow is quite the opposite. Discard it to banish 1 card from graveyard. Quick effect, very strong. Spell Canceller cancels spells. It's like Jinzo for spell cards, negating all the effects on field and removing the ability for them to be activated. Effect Veiler is one of the best known hand traps. During the main phase, you discard it and then negate the effect of 1 effect monster until the end of the turn. Its prime days have passed, mainly due to the Ghost Girls and a few other hand traps that have been introduced, but it's always something to keep in mind. Inspector Border is a floodgate? This card is weird, it does a whole bunch of things, it's got a whole bunch of text. This is generic effect suppression, but cares about the number of Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, Pendulum, and Link monsters. I think it might be too difficult to try to explain. This card really deserves a whole video on its own, just to try to make sense of the effect. Gamma Seal, the sea turtle kaiju, is the best kaiju since it has the lowest attack points. This is great, I can finally replace my copy of Volcanic Queen. Gamma Seal is quite a bit better since it does not take up your normal summon. There's some more text for the kaiju archetype with counters, and don't worry about that. Dino Wrestler Pankratops is limited, which is good because the set only gives you one copy and you only need one copy. It has a Cyber Dragon-like special summon effect, except it's even better since it only cares about your opponent having more monsters than you. It then has a targeting destruction effect if you tribute another Dino Wrestler monster, but pretty obvious it's just Pankratops. This card is a little bit better than Diamond Direwolf even, I think, because it special summons and is self-contained removal. And that's the last main deck monster. The spell lineup continues the theme of effect suppression, starting off with Called by the Grave. This card is great against pretty much all the cards we already talked about. It is an anti-hand trap card, and being a quick play spell card, one that you can activate on the first turn, or save for later. Also a quick play spell card, we have Cosmic Cyclone, which banishes, has a life point cost, and, in my opinion, still hasn't quite power crept Mystical Space Typhoon. Silent Graveyard has a discard effect, but since it's a quick play spell, can be very good to graveyard disruption. Book of Eclipse is Swords of Concealing Light and Book of Taiyu and draw support and does a little bit of everything. It's a quick play spell card, and one which is going in my side deck as a fourth copy of Swords of Concealing Light. Super Polymerization is spell speed 4, so it cannot be responded to. This one is also very format dependent, but if you have the option of a fusion monster in your deck already, or you're playing heroes with Omni Heroes, this card is great disruption since it can take an opponent's monster. I've even gone +1 with this card, when my opponent had a Levia Sea Dragon and a Destiny Hero Malicious on the field at the same time. Wave Motion Cannon is, I guess, a side deck card. This is a burn damage card, one that gets stronger as you progress through the duel, but it's just super annoying and only sees play in stall strategies, especially with Mystic Mine. Mind Control is the best monster stealing card we have access to, at least at the moment. Brain Control received an erratum, to the point where I think the card is unplayable. Change of Heart and Snatch Steal are still on the ban list, but at least Mind Control takes control of the monster until the end of the turn. It does still allow for Synchro Summons, Fusion Summons, Xyz Summons, and Link Summons with the monster. So even though the monster can't be attributed or declare an attack, there's still quite a lot of wiggle room with the card. I definitely understand why it's limited. We are finishing off with the trap cards, and black cases because I ran out of Christmas colors. Typhoon is a hand trap in the most literal sense, a trap card you can activate from hand. There's actually another of these literal hand traps in the set. This card is fast, but only hits face-up cards, so Mystical Space Typhoon might still be better, circumstantially of course. Different Dimension Ground is a 1-turn dimensional fisser. It only hits monsters, so it's not Macrocosmos, but it's an interesting option. I'm not sure it's worth the -1 in card advantage, although, being a trap card, it could come out as a surprise. Heavy Storm Duster is a +1 in card advantage, hitting 2 spell or trap cards on the field. It is a trap card itself, so if you activate it during the opponent's turn, you can ignore the battle phase problem. Dimensional Barrier is not future-proofed, hitting only Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, and Pendulum monsters. Although, I think it wouldn't be too hard to just, in the future, write Ritual or Extra Deck monsters, but that's neither here nor there. This is a good option to prevent the special summon of those types of monsters, as well as offer blanket negation. Lost Wind reads better than what it actually is. It halves the attack and can come back once to do it again. I don't understand why this card is popular. Royal Decree is like a Jinzo for trap cards that is a trap card. It just negates the effect of all other traps on the field. Such simple text. It's a wonder that Jinzo hit the ban list, but I think Royal Decree came out unscathed. Forbidden Apocrypha is another one of those non-future-proofed cards. This is one I pulled in the draft set, so if I want to, I might slot in a shiny version for the one I pulled. It is Mass Destruction that hits either Fusion, Synchro, or Xyz monsters. Anti-Spell Fragrance is still one of the best anti-pendulum tech cards, and goes well with Dork Samorg. It's another side deck option to keep in mind. There Can Only Be One is another card in the line of Gozen Match, or Unification, this time looking at monsters of one type. It limits both players to controlling only one type, and sends the remaining types to the graveyard. Very strong card, although it is a trap, so a little bit slow. Wiretap is 1-for-1 trap negation. Sort of. It shuffles the trap card back into the deck, and some people would argue that means that it's a -1, since your opponent gets the trap card back. But the deck isn't a tangible resource. It's only a +1 in the instance where every card in the deck is drawn. There is an argument to be made that the trap card can be searched, but it's still not material card advantage, only virtual card advantage. Red Reboot is the other hand trap in the set. Half your life points is a lot. It resets it, so it is a -1, but it's actually worse because they get to set another trap card from deck. So this card is -3. It does negate one card though, and has a trap stun effect afterwards. But you have to ask yourself, is it worth it? Last of the bunch is a much cheaper counter trap, Solemn Strike, with only 1500 life point cost, which negates the special summon of a monster or the activation of an effect, and destroys that card. I'm pretty sure each one of the Solemn cards is good, and you play to taste. This one might be in my main board. Now for closing thoughts. I guess the big question always is this set worth buying? And it's a little bit difficult to answer, because this was a gift from my girlfriend. It serves my needs quite well, being interesting and full of new side deck tech. It is also convenient that it can help to upgrade my previous project. And I think that goes for a lot of people's decks. If you're lacking staples, this is a pretty good set. From my perspective, the fact that it is non-randomized is quite an excellent feature, because it doesn't fall into the trap that many products do, where they're gambling adjacent. A randomized set where the value is unknown and potentially very high. If you wanted to, you could look up the set online and evaluate whether or not, to you, it's worth buying all the singles individually or buying the set. That being said, it's a lot of fun and very interesting. On the topic of upgrading the deck though, it's hard because I don't want to lose that vital essence, that draft part of the deck. If I just replace with new cards, especially a whole bunch of tech cards, it won't feel like the draft. On the other hand, I did some preliminary testing online, and my deck is worse than I anticipated. A lot worse. It's going to need quite a lot of work, especially in the side deck portion. It also feels bad to have the main board be substituted out every single game 2 and 3 in a match, so some of these cards might hit the main board. Although, I don't want to disrupt engines, and I especially don't want to disrupt the cards that were pulled during the draft. It's a balancing act, and it's going to take a little practice. A couple superficial changes, like the new copy of Bryanok the Ice Dragon and Forbidden Apocrypha, I'm not going to count as substitutions. But down the road, it might be interesting to have a winning incentive as I climb ladder ranks, unlocking new cards, and gradually increasing the power level of the deck. Although this might be hard, I will likely lose a lot of games in the beginning, and I don't want it to get too easy if I have too many tech cards. Using a ranked ladder should help with balancing that a little bit, but it's still going to be a challenge. The Clearwind Synchro Dragon is really cool because it made me reevaluate running the Speedroid cards that I pulled. And that's adding in more draft cards, which is always an option. I'm going to say that cards from the draft pool are always a free substitution, but cards I want to add into the main, extra, or side deck from this product or from the collection are going to require wins. This is going to be an interesting series.